All right, all right, all right. Well, let's
Matthew
see.
McConaughey.
What about him?
You said, all right, all right, all right. That's what.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. All right. Let's get going. This is rock and roll. This is Wall Street Beats. I am Benjamin Bry. That is my man, who's the newest fan of Victoria's Secret, Jeff Mackey, and Kevin Bakes Baker. Jeff, let's just get it off with the Victoria's Secret right off the shoot. I saw yesterday you were on Twitter broadcasting that it's your favorite stock of all time. Is that true, or just this week?
That might have been kind of a moment of afterglow. It might have been just kind of, a little excited about it. I haven't seen many stocks that have gone up 50% in anything other than just kind of dot crazy crap. A 1 day response of 50%, that's gonna engender some good feelings. I was Texas hedged it, so at the time it was absolutely my favorite, but the heart wants what it wants, so I sold the calls. We're going to use the money to go to a Stanley Cup game. I'm
There you
still
go.
long the common. It looks like it makes sense to pull back and kind of fill that gap. I would never trust a guy like that's just a lot of moving in 1 day. Carried a lot of shorts out, but it was a great quarter. This is a super popular short. I you know don't really kind of get it. Like it's there's so many easier shorts out there. PVH is getting
Look at this thing.
absolutely smoked today. They do so much of their business in the Middle East and Europe. That seemed like a natural idea for a name you could go after. Even a Five Below, which is a perfectly good company, turned in perfectly fine earnings. But as we were talking about Ben before and been talking about for a while now, when these retailers aren't just telling you at that exact moment that everything's great, they tend to just the deluge of headlines just overwhelms them and they get stomped. So you have the good ones get a few days of kind of upward stocks and then they drift lower. But there was really nothing going on with Victoria's Secrets that gave you much of a foothold as a short. That great comps, better margins, fewer ads than they've used in ages. All of that is just how good companies look. Now, they don't have a ton of runway. They're not going to be able to build 9,000 stores. In fact, they're not going to be able to build any stores.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're getting more out of every store they have. And so that's not a huge growth story, but it's still not a huge multiple, even up 50%. It's we've seen kind of tepid reactions to a lot of these earnings. Tepid is nice. Disastrous in some cases is probably more apt. And there's just been a lot of spread among the chains. I think the consumer, it's not as easy as high end, low end, K-shaped, all that crap. They like what they like, and so they're not going to stores that they really, it's there's no marginal shopping going on. They go kind of to destination specific type of outings and go shopping there. And so we've seen some really pretty decent Q1 results. They're pretty much in. We got Lulu tonight. That's going to be just a flaming dumpster fire, but to
There are
the
no
surprise of
expectations for that,
absolutely no
right?
one. What's that?
There are no expectations for Lulu, are there?
I can't imagine. It's holy crap. Fool me once. That's one thing, but this would be the sixth time in a row, give or take, that Lulu's disappointed. I can't remember the last time they didn't disappoint. So
Okay.
it's I guess kind of the hope or the idea is that they would be able to turn North American comp sales positive. I'm a big believer in the store visit. I understand why people criticize visiting stores as a way to actually do research because there's hundreds of them and you can only go to like maybe 10. But you know what? You go into those stores, this is not a chain that's turning itself around. They don't know what they want to be. Lulu kind of built its empire on making just the nicest stuff that you've ever had. I mean, it's I've got gym shorts from 8 9 years ago. They just never wear out. They were at their time just breakthrough better stuff. Now they're just kind of lost. Now they're just it's like they just kind of load a kind of a leaf blower full of ideas and just spray it at the walls. You like shoes? Well, we'll try shoes for you. We got $188 nylon tracksuits. So if Run DMC has a hit or the Beastie Boys come out with something new, both of which seems unlikely, maybe they capture the zeitgeist. But in the meantime, they were selling rugby shirts over the winter, marked down like crazy. It's but not just kind of selling them, but these are items that they're putting front and center. And so to mark their Lulu turnaround, which is exactly what Chip Wilson, the founder, was arguing against. He was saying, listen, we make technical goods. If you're going to make sporting goods or you're going to make any kind of athletic apparel, it's got to be better than the other stuff because there's plenty of people building freaking, making hoodies out there. So our hoodies have to be better and just another generic kind of fashion grab. The thing about rugby shirts is they're so uncomfortable and so unwieldy and so just kind of awful. Rugby teams don't even wear them anymore. So what the hell are you doing? Like, it's not consistent with what Lulu has done historically well. So no, there are no expectations there. It's a terrible looking chart, but we see a lot of those in the consumer space. I was joking about how skinny fat is the new kind of workout and then go get something to eat. Just based on the charts, I put up a chart of Shake Shack
Wow.
with CMG, with Nike, with Lulu, and it's honestly like we're just all sitting on the couch. These are the worst charts you've ever seen. The Chipotle chart is just where hope goes to die. Lulu, you can kind of like, I'm not sure where you make a case for that. Now, the upside bakes would be that again, those expectations are so low, they've stopped proxy fighting at Lulu, which is good because you have a lot of stuff to do. But they don't have a new CEO coming until September. That's a long time to wait in a fragile economy. It's I'm not sure what plan you announce if the person you hired literally can't show up on your campus until September. So to hire a person from Nike and then to not pay out her non-compete, super weird, super passive, incredible lack of urgency, and that's been the problem with Lulu for about 4 years.
And she kind of got Bronx cheers when her name was announced, correct?
Yeah, well, it's in theory, Nike should have killed Lulu in the crib, right? Like it's they had huge share. They're a $50 billion company. They should have either bought them or snuffed them by making better product, and instead they kind of chose to do the Jordan brand stuff. It, Godspeed to Michael Jordan. That's great that you're Michael Jordan, but he doesn't resonate with the kids. He's not, it's not an apparel line that people really need to have, want to have, or associate with. It's just strange. So she got Bronx cheers to begin with, and then when you couple that with the fact that she can't start again until September, that's just a crazy hire. It's crazy for a company in the middle of a turnaround to fire their one CEO at the beginning of the year and then say we're not going to have someone new until almost Q4. That's just it's beguiling. It's kind of gobsmacking. It's such a strange lack of urgency. So yeah, we'll see how that works out.
I didn't realize with Very Sexy that that's an all-time high. That isn't an intermediate 52-week high. That's an all-time high. I mean,
Well, it's a new
and
stock. It's a new stock. You got to remember
Right.
it like
That
got
was
spun out
21
in
IPO. I get it.
21. So
That's
it's like
5 years.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 5
But
years.
you know,
though. I
you
mean,
know,
it's not-
look, my thinking on that is that if Jeff remembers, I said Liberation Monday I was buying that thing at like $16. Now I only held it to 25 because I'm a loser. But the no, I'm very good at buying bottoms. Not it's the holding, it's the holding. It's like in Seinfeld where you got to
Seinfeld.
hold the
Seinfeld.
reservation. You know what I mean?
Seinfeld. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And yeah.
Right, Jeff, I mean, let's just talk about that because what I was attracted to about that turnaround story was, hey, we're going to go away from the woke stuff. They even changed their ticker, right? And I think that when you talk to women, they said, hey, look, the quality's not that good. They just like literally dropped the ball. It was, great company, questionable founder, but like, they lost their way. And so, I mean, is that really all this is? It's like, hey, we're blocking and tackling, doing the stuff that you've said a lot of retailers can do, that like Target as well, right? Is this kind of just another Target story where they lost their way and they're just getting back to doing business?
And better than they were before. I used to love shorting Victoria's Secrets because it was so creepy, and at the same time doing stuff like, we're going to save money by making your underwear less comfortable. They went with like kind of a worse fabric. It's like, geez, on intimate apparel, like just the word intimate itself should mean that maybe don't chafe customers like where they live. So that was, I mean, it was a glorious short for a ton of reasons, but they finally have sort of exercised their demons. They've gotten rid of there was that Wexner overhang was deep and big, and they had to become a new company. They needed to split off. They needed to really just clarify and consolidate who they were. And they focused rather presciently on a lot of good things. The new CEO Super came from Rihanna's company, Fenty, and there was some criticism, but she said, you know what, we're going to make it sexy again, but at the same time, we're going luxury. So it's I think the criticism was that it would be back to trashy, which nobody wants to see, really. It didn't. But they didn't. You walk into the stores no longer feel like that strip club creepy as hell vibe that they had for years. They're clean, well lit, luxury in the best kind of way, which is a category that's done pretty well. And luxury doesn't mean Ferrari. Luxury does, Ralph Lauren isn't the most expensive pair of pants you can buy. They're reasonably pricey, but it's that has an appeal right now. That's really kind of in the zeitgeist of what customers are wanting, and it just means quality. It doesn't mean you're spending a zillion dollars. And they became less promotional and improved their comps. If you can improve your comps by running fewer sales, that's terrific. There's really no, you had to have someone come in there with the wontons and just kind of fortitude to say, you know what, we're not going to run sales where you buy 5 and get 5 free, and just these endless kind of discount platters. We're just going to sell you a good product at a reasonable price. It's not going to be the lowest price. If you want the cheap stuff, go someplace else. But there's a place for that. There's especially in intimate apparel where people want to feel comfortable and good about what they're buying. And we saw from AEO, what I really liked about Victoria's Secrets was it was one of those beats that you could see coming. They got slammed last Friday after American Eagle and Gap reported on, people just don't study these specialty stores all that carefully, and they kind of figured, well, the mall's dead. But if you actually listen to the American Eagle call, they said that intimates are on fire. The Aerie portion of American Eagle was doing terrific. It's really hard for kind of the one of the co-leaders of market share in the space to be doing well while the other one's just collapsing. It happens, of course, but not in this case. Victoria's Secret was demonstrably a better store than it was before, and it deserved a higher multiple. Now, is it expensive? It's a lot of that 50% is being greased by the people that were short and way short, and just slamming their heads in the wall because so many retailers collapsed straight after earnings, and now this one doesn't. I mean, PVH today is just unbelievable. So it's a tough space, but again, you could see it coming, and it was great, which led me to say that it's the best stock ever. And again, probably overstatement. I don't want to. I'm walking that back a little bit, but still, I didn't sell all of it. I'm still staying long.
Anything else on your radar that you're looking at right now, Jeff? Did you want to mention today?
We're getting through a lot of the kind of the flow is starting to calm down. Lulu they always have been one of the last to report. It's usually, or before, years ago, it was a celebration. Now it's just kind of a get them out of here. But we're going to be back into sort of a seasonally tough time for some of these consumer names. So I'm lightening the book a little bit and just waiting for that inevitable sort of back to school fretting that you get. And it looks like, oil prices aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So it's time to kind of pull in the horns a little bit. And if tradition rules, and tradition tends to, you get into these choppy days of summer where people start thinking about them less, and then you crank up for back to school and Christmas. And so, we'll kind of reopen the door in July and start getting revved up again.
All right. Well, then let's move to you, Kevin. What do you got today for us, buddy?
I have a very recent buy, and I just typed it in. So why aren't you doing that? Hold on. But I just bought this the other day. Here's the long-term chart for BITI. It shorts the Bitcoin futures, which is not ideal, but it's the best vehicle I have where I have to be ETF only. But I bought it here. I haven't figured out how to use arrows in my new chart where there's break above of 25 on 168% of normal volume, and it shorts Bitcoin. And that coincides with news that Saylor at Strategy sold 32 Bitcoin, and so the Bitcoin maximalists say, "Oh, well, he's inoculating the system." That's his words, actually. He is doing this because he's so long-term bullish on Bitcoin that he feels he has to prove to the rating agencies that there's value here. and the market kind of says BS. And this is strategy I'm looking at right now, MSTR. I'm looking at this low of 104 or so to validate this. Here's Bitcoin GBTC, the longest lasting or the longest tenured Bitcoin ETF. And I'm looking at this level of 48.55 back here. Here's the long-term chart of Bitcoin in essence. I mean, that's ugly. Now, the wildebeest was. I'm going to go back to my BITI chart. And now, I'm going to use this. This is Bitcoin, and the wildebeest started limping around here, at higher prices. But now, this lion is I'm the lion now. Isn't as fast as he used to be, so he needs to have chain smoking, limping wildebeest and the Serengeti. And this looks like it right here. So if it takes out these lows here, Bitcoin itself traded in around 61,000. It broke its 52-week lows at 64 and change, and it looks like there's a lot of water being taken on here. So
Yeah. Hey, did you put up MicroStrategy as well?
I did, yes. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is that, I've been hearing from some guys who are wealth managers that they've been getting emails for the STRC preferred constantly. The guy's been selling Bitcoin, selling stock, paying on converts. He's
yep.
not buying, and I think he's been a big part of the buying. And I think that really, when I think about it, just to put some fundamental color around your chart now, because by the way, I had a little fun with it on Twitter. If you guys want to go check, I posted a little tweet of everybody leaving in the desert, leaving for the AI SpaceX train. But the reality is, all the miners they're moving to inference and training and all that. And
Yep.
then the speculators, which are kind of the same kind of investors, or I don't even want to call them investors, traders. Those guys are moving, and so it's kind of like, hey, look, what exactly? Who's the buyer? Because when it was hot, let's go back to the last time we had kind of a bubble like market with 21. That crypto was the hot girl at the dance, right? And or hot guy, could be a hot guy also. I don't want any of that, that fire. But like basically, it basically is now in a situation where I don't see who the natural buyer is. So if you are a believer, what the problem with it always is it's reflexive because it's like gold or silver. Well, not silver because it's industrial, but where you don't have a natural buyer or natural use. So it's just a speculative vehicle. And so we know speculative vehicles go up and they go down, right? And so I think, Kevin, that I'm with you. This thing breaks 60. It's like it's going a lot lower. And I think the ultimate capitulation would be Saylor having to sell some of his Bitcoin, and that look, cleaning him out would probably be the buying event, to be honest.
He's already sold some. I mean, he sold a minuscule amount. He sold 32 Bitcoin. So it's already happened. So it isn't like I'm predicting anything. He prefaced it on his earnings call and then did it a week or two later. And now what I like doing is listening to all the podcasts of the people that have said, have a great time being poor, and they're running out of narratives. It's not digital gold. It isn't an inflation hedge. It doesn't hedge against geopolitical events. And frankly, now it doesn't even coincide with, being a higher beta correlation to the Qs. So, tell me and now you've lost your biggest buyer, and the ETFs have had 12 straight days of redemptions. And I kind of go, what's going to save this? Where's the the white horse? I don't see one. And I'm just, I'm willing to be wrong, but I kind of go, I don't know how I can be wrong. And, I'm not picking this off at the lows, but this is the history of the BITI. So, there's room to work here if the futures continue to implode for Bitcoin. And I think they're going to.
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Not
It
even a
looks
little bit.
terrible. And I think where you get in every single one of these bubbles is you get people who are basically playing the charts. They're playing momentum, and they then start regarding themselves as investors because it works into that I want to be smart heuristic and I'm not just buying momentum. Those are going to be the last guys carried out of the door on this. Right now they're kind of struggling to come up with okay, the technicals are broken, the fundamentals are broken, everything Bake said about it's not really acting as a hedge against anything other than making money. um, it's you grope to find a narrative. Saylor tested the waters by selling 32 of them. The waters are basically hydrochloric acid. The stock where Bitcoin falls 15 points on just a minuscule sell. The guy's sitting on zillions of them. I'm not, it's, I don't know if I'd short it here just because nothing goes down in an absolute dead flat straight line, but the tides have definitely turned and it's just become harder to come up with any kind of thesis. And you look at the XRPs, the Solanas, you look at all of them,
Yep.
it's a
Ethereum.
misery pit. It's just, yep, the parade's gone by. And now to Ben's point, you can't, it's hard to come up with infrastructure ideas that work off this. It's all just moved on to AI. There's a new shiny object.
And I just want to say, as an aside, I always love doing shows with Jeff because you could turn a phrase with the best of them. You turn water into hydrochloric acid, and killing in the crib is going to be. I might get a tattoo about that later on today. So that's awesome.
It's the only way I know how to talk, man. But yeah, so it's
I love it. I love it.
we're
Don't
due for
go
some summer
changing to try
doldrums.
and please me. Can I give you another one?
I will not do that, Billy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since we're being politically correct with going sexy, this is coal, COAL, and coal. I have a commodity page that I look at up every day for uranium and silver, by the way, and everything, frankly. And I look and I go, coal's up 4%, and kind of nothing else is up 4%. Coal itself, I don't have that up here, but coal, the commodity, is hitting 5-year highs, and this is the only remaining coal ETF was out there because Hillary Clinton and the ESG movement killed them all. And check this out. This is coal. And yes, there's an American coal industry. They've kind of renamed and put together different vehicles, but that is a pretty chart. Full disclosure, I have not pulled the trigger, but the rumors of Cole's death have been greatly exaggerated, and my suspicion is that I dig around and I hear that we just put a chokehold on U.S. We have a lot of influence over Venezuelan and Iranian oil going to China, and they don't care about the environment, and so they're going to keep using coal and nuclear and everything because they need to. So coal prices are picking up, the stocks are picking up, and this is the way to play it because all the other coal ETFs have shut down. So I'm fascinated by this, and it's a great ticker, and I'm getting ready to rock and roll here.
Okay, great. All right. Well, it's one of those
Well,
things
what are you
where
looking at,
it's
Ben? What are
not
you
as
loving?
sexy as Victoria's Secret. Okay, yeah, I can talk for a second.
Not
I
even,
have
no, it's
been
not like
think I just was trying to make a funny line, but the no, I think that what is interesting is that you saw this Broadcom today. Kevin, you can bring that chart up real quick. They
I was
had
going to
they
talk
had
about it
good
if we had
revenue
time. Yeah,
growth,
I'm
but they beat earnings, but what happened was they were a little short on AI chips, and then they actually on the call said, "Hey, we're not seeing AI productivity," and I think that is where the big source of angst is, and I think that's where the market's really going to go to because it comes out that the COO of Uber comes out and says, we blew through all our token budget. Bain comes out with a
Yep.
study that says, hey, guys aren't getting an ROI like they thought. And I think this is where the focus of the whole market's going to come is that the enterprise might have a pause and say, hey, wait a minute. How do we even measure returns? Like what are the returns on this? And then, how much are we actually spending and what are we getting? And this has been jammed down everybody's throats. And yeah, there's some good stuff here, but I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised that enterprises could do a pause, or a deceleration is what I should say. Um, and that's what you saw here. And I think the market's like, ooh, and then these things are not priced like that at all. And as everybody knows, I mean, this has been a one-way train to heaven for all that whole trade. And I think that there's very crowded trade, and we all know how crowded trades can go. They can unwind fast, and so it's not a big deal, this Broadcom, because it just gave back everything it had in the run up over the last week. But I think it's something to watch, and I think that's where I would be cautious here, is that the AI trade is one that I think is just given. People are just, oh, it's a given, but there's a lot of things under the hood that make me think that, like, the enterprise might be surprising. And there's a lot of capital that has gone into this. And when you start looking at the capex numbers needed, we saw a Google equity raise for 80 billion this week, boys. I don't think that anybody in their mind
From
5 years
Berkshire.
ago would have ever thought they'd see another equity raise out of Google ever again. This is only the third one they've ever done. And I think that gave some pause to the market. I think people were like, oh, and it's funny because on my Sunday show of Benny and the Squirrel, I said that to the squirrel. I said, you know what? You might be surprised. We might be getting close to seeing some Meg 7 equity offerings. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And there we go on Monday. And I think now people are like, oh, wow, why are they doing this? They didn't disclose exactly why they're doing it. There's speculation. Well, if SpaceX fails, they could buy SpaceX. Or maybe they're just getting in front of the SpaceX and they're getting in front of the OpenAI. I don't know. They didn't consult me, but I'm just telling you that there's a signaling aspect to them doing such a large amount of deal. And there's a lot of debt funding going on in this, but I think that people can also take it as, oh, maybe the credit market, especially the private credit market, isn't quite there as much as people like to think it is. Because if you look at credit spreads, they're kind of tight in the broad market, but under the surface, we see things like Cliffwater and some of these private credit funds, 10% redemptions, 17% redemptions, constant redemptions. And basically, that could be them getting in front of this because they see, when we talk about markets, well, I like to think of them in terms of states, right? Right now, we're in a risk on capital markets wide open state. Well, there's a lot of stuff that if we go to the other state, which is capital markets off, that will trade very differently because this train needs capital, constant capital. And so, these capex numbers of 1.1, 1.2 trillion for next year, it's going to be a stretch to get there because that's going to be all the free cash flow of the hyperscalers and then another 450 billion of capital. And where's that coming from? You know what I mean? And then if people are starting to worry about the ROI, right, then you have a situation where the ROI question will start to, like a virus, it'll get in people's minds. And we don't, unless you're at my old shop at Fidelity. I was talking to an old colleague of mine yesterday. I was like, this would be a great time to be working at Fidelity because every day you're getting Fortune 500 companies coming in, and I would go to every meeting and be like, what's your ROI? How much you spending? Like, that's such an interesting thing across industries right now. And basically, I think that we're in a situation where if this pauses at the enterprise level or decelerates, that you will see some reversal on this. And the last thing I'll say is we got the SpaceX next week. We did some work on that and put a note out about it. I think that this will be a very interesting IPO. I mean, this is 105 times revenue, boys. I mean, Jeff, how the hell do we start a company and sell for 105 times revenue?
My God, I know. I mean, it's crazy, and what people miss just on the AI point and kind of the way history kind of has a little echo to it. The internet turned out to be a really big thing too. That doesn't mean that everything didn't get overbought. AI is going to clearly change the way we do a lot of different stuff. That doesn't mean that everybody is right to be dumping all their cash into it and that you need to be long every single stock. There's a digestion point and a point at which it just kind of to the idea on ROI. You don't just fire everybody and let your bot do it and feed it endless tokens. That's not a business model for a lot of these guys that are using or the end users of the product. And so it's the shakeout will be kind of a discrimination of the players that actually have a functional use for it. you could see money coming back into the software as a service. You see a lot of it, like just the way you do your business is it's AI is not a